All right. How are we all doing this week? This is our last week together, week 4. Gee, it went fast. I hope you guys are learning stuff. I hope you're having a little bit of fun as well. Welcome, Lori. You just got here in time. I'm just starting up. How we doing? You okay?
Hello.
How are you? You sound terrible. What's the matter?
Oh, now I had a rough day today.
Oh,
Still getting over whatever this is, and it turning to severe blindness. I went in to get acupuncture, and I'm really out of it and very tired. So
did it help you? Did the acupuncture help you?
not yet.
No.
Um,
Okay.
but I'm just super super tired and pretty foggy. So
Okay. Well, listen, try to take it easy. We got tonight and we got tomorrow night. There's a bunch
yeah,
of stuff I want to cover. I'm going to try to do it in a logical way. So hopefully, at least you're here. You can ask me any questions as
I'm
we go along. That's usually very helpful. So, okay.
fantastic, Bill.
All
Great.
right. So what I want to do is I'm going to start off by talking about the discussion. The discussion this week, I think, is you're going to find it to be very easy. Really, what it's all about is when Photoshopping goes bad. This is our 4th week working with Photoshop, and we're doing what in my estimation is the most fun thing that you can do with Photoshop, and that is create these interesting montages of images. I mean, there's a lot of other things Photoshop will do. This is one of the things that I find the most enjoyable and also the most challenging. And I find as a graphic designer, I generally like challenges. So, that makes the day more interesting when you do this. There's plenty of examples of when Photoshopping goes bad. And as a way of showing you this, I simply went into Google, or actually I only went into Yahoo, and I searched for when Photoshop masking goes bad. And I have found a ton of pictures. So if you haven't gone to the point yet where you've, done this, you're going to have no trouble finding images. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to scroll down to one. There's one of the images that has already been used in one of the posts. I recognized it immediately because it's the hand where they took the bag out and they
Yep.
didn't finish the job of taking the bag out. One of you have used this already. I'm just showing it as because I think it's humorous. But the point is there's tons of picture here, and all I did was look up when Photoshop masking goes bad. And if I go back to where it's the web, okay, I have the complete beginner's guide to Photoshop masking, which is, I don't know that that'll help us. But some of these things, if you go through here, okay, you should be able to find, here's when HTML, that's HTML, essential, geez, I'm not having any trouble. I'm not having any luck with this. You'll have to look through here and see. There's 321,000 results in here, so you should be able to find some. And I didn't do this myself because I've had so much experience doing this. I was able to pretty much write my discussion post just from memory. And I did find one site where I used a pretty good reference, and you can go and you can see that. And I don't want to belabor the fact very much, but I just wanted to show you that it's very simple. When Photoshop masking goes bad, and then click on images, and you'll have no trouble finding an image to use. Here's one where there's too many hands. That's kind of common, and there's a bunch of them. You can go through there and find one that you like. And then, of course, come back to the web, and you can maybe find a page that you can go to and look at and help you with the writing of this. I think at this point, though, if you get a good picture, I think you probably should have enough knowledge to be able to write on your own about masking and when it goes bad, what might be the problems. So keep in mind that you have your due dates and participation requirements here. Keep that in mind because the better you do with keeping your dates and meeting your requirements, the better your grade's going to be. So keep that in mind. The objectives in this are to learn and apply appropriate editing techniques to retouch, restore, enhance a photograph. identify 3 common mistakes, making selections to create masks. That's essentially what this is all about. And actually, this kind of leads us into what we're doing in our assignment this week too. Also in our assessment, which is another quiz. And last week, I have to apologize for everybody. I promised you all that I was going to give you some instruction that would help you with the assessment, and it just completely slipped my mind. So I've got today and I've got tomorrow. I will very much try to, and one of you guys remind me if it happens that I'm slipping and I'm not doing it, remind me before the end of the night tonight or before the end of the night tomorrow night if we have time, and I will do that. I want to go over what the assessment is. I can't give you the question, but I can target you and get it so that you kind of have some idea of what you need to know. Maybe that will help you, okay? I'm not going to read the background on this. I'm going to jump down to the prompt. Actually, I just want to point out a couple of things, okay? Low quality images. I spotted this. I've talked about this in the past. It's very important for you to understand that there are different qualities of images. There are different resolution qualities of images, and they directly relate to the size of the image and its use. If you're using an image that has 72 pixels per inch, that image is going to work on the web and nothing more. If you have something that's 300 pixels per inch, that will work in print, but the image will be huge if you try to put it on the web. So as a graphic designer, it becomes very important for you guys to understand a few basic principles so that your work will be correct and appropriate for whatever media type you're working with. And when I talk about media types, the web, a web page, a website, that's a media type. A print environment of different types, they're all media types. So that's what I'm talking about here. All right, so it's very important to consider that. And the techniques, that's pretty much what we've been covering in this course. So, you've learned many of the techniques. I'm not saying they're every single technique that we've been through here, but we've been through a good number of the techniques that you will employ when you do this kind of work, okay? Let's go down a little bit. And so we get to the prompt. For this discussion, and this is why I think this particular discussion has the potential to be kind of fun, because basically for this discussion you're going to find and share a flawed Photoshop composite. You're going to find a worst case scenario, a disaster. That's really what it is, and discuss why the composition, either the composition isn't effective, or some aspect of the masking technique, or some approach where something perhaps was missed or poorly done. I think you get the idea, right, Lori? That's easy enough to comprehend, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a fun topic. I do. I believe if you get an image, I've seen a couple of images, there's 2 already in there, and both of them have interesting images, and they do a pretty good job of discussing the problems that are inherent in the image. So you shouldn't have any trouble doing this, and I think it's probably interesting and enjoyable enough that it won't be laborious. I could imagine very easily that there would be discussions that would be a lot more of a pain in the neck than something like this. This one should. I
think this has been the best. This whole mod has been the best discussion I've ever been involved in for over 2 years since I started school. So I'm really liking the discussions.
Yeah, and I think they've been interesting topics. And I, just so that you guys understand, I don't write these courses. No. I just come in here and I teach the courses. That's all it is. So if I get good material to teach, it's easier for me. I will try to do my best to add on stuff to whatever's in here and do my best to make sure it's relevant and makes sense within the context of what we're doing. But if you have a decent context, you're going to have a good course. Now, there were image problems. I mean, that first little image that we had was jittery and jumpy, and it was kind of frustrating for me because I would have liked to have had a better video to give you to work on, because I think you would have had a much nicer result. But in spite of that, you all did a pretty darn good job of pulling that off, and some of you were very creative in how you did it. So I applaud all of you for dealing with that. Now, as far as the pictures of the ladies are concerned, those pictures were all very good. I think every one of those pictures made a fun and interesting assignment for you guys to work on. There was enough of a challenge to each one of them that it made it interesting, fun, and with an appropriate amount of difficulty. Nothing too, awful. It just right, that one. So out of the 4 assignments, I would say that's probably your best because they had the best photos. Now, the third assignment, the horse photos were pretty good. They had several good horse photos in there. They were all fairly good. It was the character, the male female characters that were poor. They really did not find the absolute best photos to use. They just didn't like marrying up with the photos of the horse. And I know you saw that, right, Lori? I mean, you could easily see that.
Oh yeah. And I think mine probably shows it. But
I'm ready to deal with you. What I'm most concerned about, I'm not as concerned, and I said this in week 1 and I said this in week 3. In week 2, I was a little more concerned with how you did it because those photos were good. But in week 1, with that jittery photo, I wasn't so much concerned with how the end result worked. It was that you did it right. And it was the same thing in week 3. I wasn't as concerned with whether the horse and the body make total sense, because they don't, and there was nothing that you were going to do to make them make total sense. What I was most concerned about in week 3 was seeing how cleanly you guys achieved the masking. And I got to tell you, for all of you who have submitted, and I mean most of you have submitted, I applaud every one of you. You guys really were on top of this. You did very well. Most every one of you submitted something to me that I was very happy to see. So I say that to everyone in the class. I'm very appreciative for your effort. I think you did really good. Were there little small, little details that might have been a little off? Yeah, there might have been something here and there. And you got my critiques, and my critiques tried to explain to you what I thought was wrong with it. But generally speaking, the masking aspects you all got. And that's what's really important here, because we're learning technique. That technique is what you're going to be using in the future. It's going to be one of the things that'll be very important to you. So really very good on all of you, okay? So again, for this discussion, you can find yourself a flawed picture. What changes could have been made to improve the composite? These are easy questions. If you take a look at the picture, I mean, more than likely it's going to be extremely obvious what the problems are. And all you have to do is basically outline what those problems are. What could the artist have done to make the transition believable? Well, if the transition is believable, you would say, even though there is this problem, there's that problem, he did make the transitions believable. However, if the transitions, the edges are too sharp, well, obviously, you'd say, well, I need to soften the edges, make the edges a little more believable. They're a little harsh, if they're not clean. And I'm sure as you go through the process of picking your images to use for this discussion, you're going to look at these images and you're going to see obvious flaws. That's all basically you have to do, is to point out the obvious flaws. You talk about the shadowing issues, and the shadowing, could it be made more effective? Speculate a little bit on what tools you think you might have used. See, and that's another thing too. Internalize it. When you look at something, how do you think you might have achieved it? The problem that you have is very often when you look at these pictures, and some of you guys, that's another thing I wanted to point out. Some of you guys in your last week's discussion found great pictures that were like before and after. I was incredibly impressed with the fact that some of you had before and after pictures. Before and after pictures gives every single one of us the opportunity to look at those pictures and really figure out, or at least attempt to figure out, how we might do these extractions. If you just look at a finished picture, it's almost impossible to tell how they did it, because you don't know what the pictures look like before they began to put the assemblage together. Does that make sense, Lori, what I'm talking about here?
Those were really helpful for those of you who did that. Plus, those of you who also, many of you put the tutorials in. That was really helpful and very interesting, because like you said, you just put a done image in there. Well, what did they do to get to that point?
Yep.
So So yeah, it was very, very helpful last
Right.
week.
And here's something I would like to say to every one of you. There's a lesson in this, and that is that the people who went to the trouble of doing that, putting in tutorials, putting in before and after images, you guys put extra effort into this. So my point is, and I've been saying this through the whole course, and I say this to everybody in every one of my courses, these little things are what are going to impress your instructors, not just me, but all of your instructors. So if you learn through the process of doing these things and apply these same things to your other courses as you go along, even something like adding a formal title to your document where you have the name of your submission, the title for your submission, the course number, and your instructor's name. All these little things make you look more professional. And believe me when I tell you, I promise you, your instructors will notice this. It will make a big difference to how they feel about you and your work. So again, not just for me, but for you. These things are important. You should be doing them,
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So we're also talking about blending modes tonight. Tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about blending modes and adjustment layers and stuff like that. So what you know already, we've done a little bit of work with adjustments. Week 1, we didn't necessarily, but week 2, we did a little bit with the dresses and how we adjusted the dresses. We used things like leveling. We used blend modes, right? Remember, we used levels and we used blend modes and stuff like that, right?
Yep.
And this week, we're going to show you a little bit more about this when I do backgrounds. I got 2 backgrounds that I've been playing around with, and I want to show you some of the things. The problem with working on these backgrounds is the sky's the limit. I mean, I don't have enough time in the week to show you all the possibilities. There's so many possibilities of what you can do by taking images and blending them together to create a really strange background. I've done a couple of things that I think are going to be fairly obvious, but even if they're not obvious, I'm going to show you how I did some of this stuff so that you can actually play with it. But there are so many ways that you could take these images and make them interact with one another to create a very odd background to put this mythical creature in for your book cover. Okay, so that's the issue for the week. But the other issue for the week is the technique involved in creating the final piece of art, which has got to do 2 things. It's got to do one thing. It's got to be a PDF that's going to be used for print. And then the other thing is you're going to save it as a JPEG, which is going to go up to your Behance site. Now, Lori, you have a Behance site, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and you know how to put stuff up on Behance, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's not going to be a problem. All you have to do is remember that you're going to create a JPEG. It tells you right in the assignment that you create a JPEG for your Behance site, and then you're going to create a PDF for submission, okay?
Yep.
So I'm a little bit ahead of myself, but that's basically where we're heading. So you got any questions about so far what we're doing with this? By the way, did you put your discussion in yet or no?
I did this
You
morning.
did? Okay. All right. So you had no problems, right?
This afternoon. That acupuncture just really whacked me out. I think I started it this morning and finished it this afternoon. So hopefully it made sense because, boy, my head's just kind of in the clouds today. So.
All right. Do you have a minute to tell me quickly where you found your image and your citation? How did you achieve that?
I think I just Googled, Photoshop masking fails or Photoshop masking gone bad.
Okay,
and
that's logical.
I found both images and articles.
There you go. Okay, that's the reason I'm asking is because, I'm asking because you're here and you said you did it, so I figured, I showed you how I went and did it. And I don't remember when I actually wrote this thing because I wrote this thing last week. Sometime last week, I actually wrote this thing. I
think my first search gave me like over 2 million things, so I mean, I don't think anybody's going to have any problem.
No.
Whatsoever fun. I mean, they run rampant.
And if you pick a fun and interesting image, I just think it makes it all the easier for you to write about it. You know what I mean? Because they are humorous. Some of these fails are really humorous.
Well, what got me isn't there someone who, like the woman with the handbag? She seemed to be without the handbag, with the strap, without the handbag. She seemed to be very, very popular in my search. And aren't there people who proof these things before they go to print and publish?
Read a couple of my replies.
I mean, wow.
Yeah, read a couple of my replies because I talk about that in a couple of my replies. I've already replied to several of the posts. I don't think I got to you yet, but
no,
I replied.
I haven't been back on since.
Right, but I did reply a couple of times, and I addressed that situation in that reply. So I don't want to get into it now because I got other things to do. But yeah, if you read the reply, you'll see where I was talking a little bit about that because that's a very good point. You would think to yourself that somebody who is basically a client and you're doing it for a client and who you're being paid to do this, they would look at it and be able to spot that, you know. And but it time and time again this happens, and let me tell you, it happens to some. It's happened to I don't know whether it was Time magazine, but big magazines.
Oh yeah, and I mean,
yeah, no, it happens. People, you know what it is? People are busy looking at the big picture and they're so focused on the big picture that they could possibly miss a small detail.
It's like not to sound cliche or esoteric, but it's like, you know, enjoy the journey while you're getting to your destination type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were some.
Yeah. So there's a few in here. I can see it already. There's a few in here. I'm just zipping through it. I'm not going to take any time with it. There's a few in there, but I think you'll enjoy it. Also, in the announcements are pretty typical this week. Basically, just me. Coaching you on to finish strong and telling you that here's some information for you about Wanda. Have you used Wanda yet at all, Lori?
I haven't this mod just because of the times that she was on, but I've used her.
Okay, so you know her, she's capable, right?
Oh, she's wonderful.
Yeah, so there you go. So, like I say, there's me, there's Wanda, and I'm sure you can find your way around to both of us one way or the other, and I'd be more than willing to help anybody. All you got to do is give me a call. If I can't answer the phone, leave me a message. I'll call you back. I always do. And I respond very quickly to emails. I usually do it within, maybe several hours at the most usually, unless I'm really tied up with something, which occasionally happens.
Well, last week I was having a problem getting one of the horse images to work in Photoshop and just messed around with it, changed its name, finally got it in. But you got back to me, I think, within like 15 minutes. And actually even went on to Blackboard Collaborate, and we just got it figured out. So, quick, easy fix.
Cool. All right. Well, that's it. That's all I want to say, and that verifies it. Like I say, I will do anything I can to help you. That you have my word on. All right.
And that definitely helped. So thank you.
So, learning objectives, we're working with blend modes, recoloring and compositing. Use 2 blend modes to match the subject to the background. Easy and fun stuff. There is an issue I want to talk about first. Again, I don't read all of this stuff, but I'm going to kind of breeze through it. They are offering you the color dodge, creates a nice high contrast color effect that saturates the midtones and brightness or highlights. My recommendation is, and again, I don't know whether you've done this, Lori, or anyone else in the class for that matter, but what I would do is I would Google blend modes in Photoshop or color modes in Photoshop. And you'll find, again, just like everything else, tons and tons and tons and tons of information that you can read through that will explain these things in just glorious detail. So it is the kind of thing you don't have to do it right this second, but if you really are interested in understanding on a deeper level what these modes are supposed to do, I mean, I generally just go through them. What I do, it may sound very, amateurish, but what I generally do with mine is I go through and I kind of like, just scan through several that I think will work. And sometimes what I think is going to work doesn't work at all. And other times when I try something that I just try almost out of desperation, I find that it works. So, sometimes these blend modes can surprise you and do things that visually are cool. Remember now, we are not color correcting like if it were somebody like a model for a fashion magazine or a cosmetic magazine. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing are the crazy creative things. That's why this is a fun course, because we're actually getting to do some really unusual things here. So that's important for you to kind of understand. So you got overlay, saturation, ideal blending mode for taking yellow out of white objects like teeth. Desaturate it, and what happens is you're removing the color. By desaturating it, you're taking the color out. By saturating it, you're adding color in. Okay, so if you were to look at the hue and saturation sliders, you would be basically, if you look at it, one would be white or light gray on one end, and on the other end it would be the solid color, whatever color that is.
Right.
So that's what it is. Overlay, most commonly used to blend, and we used overlay in our week 2 assignment. I know that because overlay blend the colors in. If you remember what we did, we took our dresses and we desaturated the dresses. We removed the color that was originally in the dress area, turned it to black and white, grayscale, and we lightened it up as much as we could so that when we put the color over top of it, the color then reacted on the black and white and mid-tone grays, and you ended up with something that was believably colored. So that's essentially what we did. And we used overlay was one of the mechanisms that we used to do that, one of the modes that we used. Okay, now here is the big nut for tonight, CMYK and RGB color modes. So are you how familiar are you with CMYK and RGB color modes, Lori?
Somewhat familiar, and most of my familiarity I got from it is from your classes.
Okay.
I think I had 3
Yeah, because
classes.
I make a big deal out of it in all my classes.
Yeah, but I think it's really important because if you're not on the right mode, or if you bring something to the printers, or a number of different things, it is not going to turn out correctly.
Yeah. So here's what it says. It says, in the professional publishing world, the final PDF would be delivered in CMYK mode. Now, why that is because the media type, which would be 4-color process printing, 4-color process is equal to CMYK. So you see, C and YK, there's 4 colors. C, cyan, magenta, yellow, and K for black. So that's when you talk about 4-color process printing, that media type requires the CMYK color mode. If you were to send somebody the RGB, they wouldn't necessarily be able to use it. They would have a choice. They would either have to convert it themselves, and if they're a good printer, if there's somebody who's your friend and you do a lot of business with them and you make that mistake, they would correct it for you. But if they're not, they could turn around and correct it for you and charge you for that.
Yeah.
Okay. The bottom line is, as a designer, you should know the difference between the 2 color modes. So, I make a point of talking about these things because, I have to add something to the course. If I don't add things to the course, then I'm not a really good instructor, and I'm not really helping you as a designer. I mean, I try to give you things as a designer that I think are of value to you. And I think technical things are of value because a lot of times they get overlooked. And you got to get out there and you got to start working. And somebody sure as heck should have shown you this stuff, or you're not going to know it. So, that's one of the things that I try to bring to my courses. So RGB mode, it's mostly used for designs for screen, not for print, as it says right here. Okay, it's an additive color mode, and it represents how colored light works. So whenever you're working with RGB, you know that you're working with some sort of a media type that's going to project the image. Like, for instance, you would use RGB if you were making PowerPoint slide presentations. And the reason being is you're probably using a combination of a computer and a projection screen or a projection system. And that means all of that's working by virtue of light. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
All of that is working around light. There's no paper. There's no ink being applied to paper. It's just basically being either displayed on a screen by virtue of light, or it's being projected onto a screen by virtue of light. So RGB works. And that's the color mode that you would be working with for that type of media. However, if you're printing something, what's happening is you are separating components of the image into 4 basic elements: cyan, the element, which is the cyan aspect of the image, the magenta aspect of the image, the yellow aspect of the image, and the K, or the black aspect of the image. And if you remember last week, when we were working on the channel pull,
Uh-huh.
we were making a mask out of a channel pull. One of the things that I told you to do was to take a look at, and we were using RGB because the default color mode that opens up an image, unless you've deliberately converted it to CMYK, RGB is what generally an image will come open as by default. That's just the way the program works.
And then I remember we even added CMYK to that RGB in the channels.
Well, I converted it to show you, but you don't use it.
Right.
Yeah, you don't really use it. But what I'm getting at is if you have an image that you've converted into CMYK, once it goes into CMYK, when you open it up, it's going to be in CMYK because you converted it. Yeah. But by nature, the program will automatically open it up in RGB generally, unless, of course, like I said, it's a CMYK converted image. Then it will open up in CMYK. So what we did in week 3 for the channel pull was we took a look at each one of those channels. There was a red channel, a green channel, and a blue channel. And I tried to explain to you that the colors kind of work backwards. Where you saw the lightest of the channels, if you remember, most of the channels had a very light channel. There was a channel that might have been a little darker, a little lighter, a little, you know what I mean, a kind of a mid kind of channel. And then there was usually one channel that was extremely dark. You kind of remember that as a standard look for those channels? Well, how they were working was backwards. The darkest channel was what was producing the least amount of color.
Right.
The channel that was the lightest was where the most color was coming from. So that's how that works, and it's a similar process with CMYK. We're going to actually go over that a little bit later on when we get to that point. I'm just talking generally about this right now because it's here. So the CMYK mode, and I want to focus on this one because all you're going to be doing with RGB is you're going to be creating a JPEG. That JPEG is going to be in RGB, and that's going to be what you're going to put on Behance. All right, so that's not a big deal. You just have to, when you get your composite done, you're just going to save it as a JPEG before you convert it to CMYK, and you'll be golden. Okay, so no big deal. So, but I'm going to focus on CMYK because that's the one that is the kind of biggie. So the CMYK, also known as 4-color process color, is a subtractive color model, is recommended for print design work. CMYK refers to the 4 ink colors that are used in print production: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Black is also called the key plate. Originally, there was only cyan, magenta, and yellow, and those colors together mixed were supposed to create the black. However, it was determined that over time that they never actually did. You always ended up with kind of a muddy brown as opposed to black. So somewhere along the line in the production of all this, they added this black or key plate. And that black or key plate is actually black that helps to create the dark, dark blacks that you would get in a picture. So that's how it's done. Don't ask me to get any more technical about it than that because you don't need to know any more about it. You just need to know why it is the way it is. All right. CMYK mode offers fewer adjustment layers and filters. So what that means essentially is if you take an image and turn it into CMYK, you're going to find that a lot of the techniques that we use when the image is in RGB become unavailable to you. There's just, the program has basically got a bias towards CMYK. So generally, what designers like you and I do is we do our entire project in RGB. Mm-hmm. And what we do is we wait till the very end, and just before we are ready to send this thing off to production, we convert it from RGB into CMYK. And as a matter of fact, a lot of times somebody like a graphic designer will make a duplicate, and maybe they'll name one of them, let's say Project 1 RGB, Project 1 CMYK. So in a folder, you'll have the CMYK of Project One and the RGB of Project One. So if you need to go in and make a modification to the RGB, you can open up that file and it's still in RGB. If you have to modify the CMYK, you can open up that file and make a modification there. Okay, so that's one way to handle that. But the bottom line is there for different purposes. So it's very important that you realize that, and that these things get done. It's part of what we're going to be doing with this week's assignment. So I wanted to make sure that, I talk about it and you understand how that works. There's one other thing that I want to talk about, and that is, let me jump down to the assignment instructions real quickly. I'm going to go back over this in a second, but I just want to jump down here for a minute because there's something that's incredibly important. Where are we going here? Where does it say? It doesn't give us the size. I guess they're not going to tell you the size again because they told you the size last week. The size of this, and this is something they should talk about. They don't talk about this. This is a very important point, and it could be overlooked. So I'm going to go over it. Last week, in the assignment last week, they talked about how this cover that you're making is a 6 by 9 inch cover. Do you remember that?
I remember that, yep.
Okay. Now, the cover bleeds all the way around. You know what a bleed is, right?
Yep.
Yeah, bleed means that the image is going to actually go right to the trim. And in order to do that, the image has to go a tiny bit beyond the trim, so when it gets cut back, it cleanly cuts to the trim and looks correct. And that's known as a bleed. Now, generally speaking, a bleed is 1/8 of an inch, which if you use it in decimals, it's 0.125 IN. So if you have it bleeding 4 ways, you have to have a bleed of 1.5 IN on the right and 1.5 IN on the left. And if you were going to bleed it top to bottom, you'd have to have 1.125 IN at the top and 0.125 IN at the bottom. So that means that if we were doing this for real, the size that they gave us is not correct. You know why?
No.
Okay. Well, it's 6 by 9, right?
It's not going to match with the bleeds.
Yeah, it's 6 by 9 does not take into account the bleed. In order for it to be correct, the actual size. Now, I can imagine some of you are going, "Oh my God, is this guy for real?" Yes,
No,
I am.
Stuff.
I am for real. I am absolutely for real. This is important stuff. I mean, so important, in fact, that what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Adobe InDesign and I'm going to visualize this by showing you how this works, just so that you're absolutely clear on this, because this is, I think, one of the most important things that you could walk away with here is this and the idea of CMYK as opposed to RGB. So let me do this. Let me quickly go to InDesign, and I'm going to go File, New, Document. Now, I'm going to create a document for print. Let's see what we got here. Print. Okay. Now, I am going to create my document over here. All right. And I want to explain something to you before I do this. When you create a book cover, you have to create the book cover in what is known as a folio. Okay. And what that means is there are 4 pages to a book cover. There's a front page, outside front page. There's an inside front page, an inside back page, and an outside back page. So if you were going to create, and it would probably be printed separate of the book itself. It would not be printed as directly part of a book. Do you know why that would be, Lori?
Not exactly.
Think about a book. What's the difference? What's the major difference between a book cover and a book? The most pronounced difference. Think about it for 1 second and see if you can.
I mean, the cover, because it's got, whether you color it or whatever you have.
Now think about the weight of the stock.
Oh, it's going to be much heavier.
Bingo. So what I'm trying to get at here is that you can't run a book and a cover. They have to be run separate because the paper is going to be completely different. So what I'm getting at is that when you create a cover for a book, what we're doing in our project is we're just creating the outside front cover for a book. But in reality, what would happen is the cover that we're going to create would be incorporated into a 4-page folio of pages, 4 pages that would be for the entire book. Okay. So what I'm doing in here is I'm trying to demonstrate how this might happen. Okay. So what I would do is, we know that the width on this is 6, right? And the height is 9. Yeah. So the 6, it's right now set to 8.5 IN. What I am going to do, remember now, I'm going to be creating a 6-inch cover, and I have to have 1/8 of an inch on either side of bleed. So 1/8 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch, which is 0.125. In order for me to get 1/4 of an inch, it would be 0.25, right?
Right.
All right. So what I would do here is I would change the 8.5. I didn't get that very well. Let's go 8.5 to 6.25. Actually, you know what? No. I would just create it. No. What I would do, that's in Photoshop. I would go 6 by 9. This is how I would do it in InDesign. I'm getting myself confused because I'm thinking Photoshop.
Yeah.
6 by 9 inch. There's the orientation. Okay. There would be 4 pages. Okay. And I would set them up as facing pages. Do you know why? Because the front and back pages don't face, well, they do, but they're on separate. You'll see what I'm talking about. The centerpiece acts as a spread. So I would have facing pages. And I would come down to bleed and slug. Okay. And I would make sure that I have this linked, and I would go bleed all the way around of 0.125 inch. Okay, so you see how all the way around is 0.125 inch?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you've had InDesign before, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you've done all these things, only not to a 6 by 9 piece. You've done it for other purpose. And you've put together bleeds, so you know what this is. This is not something that's going to surprise you, right?
Right.
Right. But I'm saying this because we're doing a project in Adobe Photoshop, and they don't ask you to take this into consideration. And the only reason I am asking you to take this into consideration is because I want to make sure that I teach you to do this the right way. Because you're going to have to include this. If that cover that we were producing, which is not for real, it's a school project, but if it was for real, and if you just made it 6 by 9, you'd have a problem. Because the image is going to be too small for the cover. So you really have to make it 6.25 IN by 9.25 IN. That would give you enough coverage that when you place this into your page, let me create this page. Okay, here it comes. One day.
Yeah, it does that sometimes.
Here we go.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So let me go zoom out. Let me zoom out if I can get this. Let me see if I can entire pasteboard. No, I can't. That's not it. All right. Well, I'll show you the spreads in a second. What did I only do? 2 pages here? All right. I think I messed this up. Let's go File, Document Setup. Let me see. Did I actually 6 by 9 number? I did. I actually put in 2. I need 4 and hit OK. Let's see if that fixes it. There we go. That's it. Okay. So there's the front cover, outside front cover. That's the inside. If I double click on this, there's the inside front. There's the inside back, and there's the back. Okay. That's basically what that folio looks like. And that is a correct form for a cover. Now, what we are doing, project we're working on, is page number 1, which is the outside front cover. Now, let me explain. Forget the margin. The margin doesn't enter into this. Concentrate mostly on that little black line and that little red line. The little red line is 6 inches wide by 9 inches tall. That is the trim line. That is where the actual piece is going to trim out to. Our picture that's going to cover the entire front of this must go to that red line all the way around. So the reason I'm going to all this trouble to open up InDesign to show you this is because I wanted you to understand how important it is to keep in mind that this is what's going to happen. And in order for your image to work correctly, instead of your image being 6 inches by 9 inches at 300 pixels per inch, it really needs to be 6.25 inches, right?
Yep.
By 9.25 inches. Now, can I ask you something? You read the assignment for last week, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Did they tell you that?
They did not.
Okay, so they didn't tell you that. Who's telling you that?
You are.
Exactly. So the reason that I'm telling you this is because I want to make sure that everybody in here understands that what I am telling you is correct, and that's the kind of thing that you need to know whenever you're working on something, and I don't care what it is. There's going to be a size that they give you, and you need to inquire whether the size includes bleed or not. Usually the size will not. In other words, if you get something like a product sheet that's 8.5 product sheet, it's going to be 8.5 inches. They're not telling you that the bleed is included in that 8.5 inches. That's the size of the piece. Just like 6 by 9 is the size of the piece. So it's up to you as a good designer, if you're designing something like what we're doing in Photoshop, which is creating an all-encompassing cover. This cover is being entirely built in Photoshop, including the text. If it's going to be done correctly, you have to anticipate that small amount of extra coverage so that it will bleed all the way around. So if you submit something 6 by 9, the assignment tells you that that's the size it should be. And I can't fail you for that, but I'm trying to teach you that it is incorrect. That's not correct. What's correct?
An enormous amount of work that would be, whether you're a student or especially for a client, if you had done something like that, that would be a disaster.
Well, it wouldn't be a terrible disaster, but it would be, you'd have to try to rectify it. That's the whole point. So the reason that I'm doing this is, I'm not saying that if you give me something 6 by 9, I'm going to fail you. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying to you is that I'm a graphic designer who's trying to teach you something that is not being specified within the course itself. But it's absolutely essential for you to know. That's what it is, and that's what makes an instructor is his willingness or her willingness to tell you these things. Because again, some of this is left up to me, and these are things that are very important in your overall learning. So there's your visualization. That's the problem. Right there, 6 by 9 is that black line. That's what you've been told to do. I am telling you that in reality, you have to go a little bit further on your images to allow for bleed. Why? Because the entire cover is going to bleed 4-way around. Now, actually, it's not going to bleed 4-way around. It's going to bleed 3-way around. You know why? Because one of these edges, probably this edge here, would be on the spine. But my point is, if you know anything about Adobe InDesign, and I'm going to show you this real quickly here, just to make sure you remember this. If you create a text frame, I used a text frame, but it doesn't matter. It could be a picture frame, whatever. There's a frame, right?
Right.
Okay, now that frame is going all the way out to the bleed. You see that? All the way around?
Yep. Okay,
so if you have a spine, let's say the spine's on this side. All I have to do for that spine is drag that over to that trim line right there. Yep. And now that thing doesn't have a bleed on it anymore. And if I put a picture in there, even if there's a bleed image in there, if there's an extra bleed image in there, it doesn't matter because it's not going to show because it doesn't go to the edge of the bleed. It goes to the spine.
Makes perfect sense.
Right. So, I mean, again, these are important things that you need to know because you might be producing art for me. I might be your graphic designer that gave you the job of creating this wonderful cover. And if you don't create it properly for me, 2 things are going to happen. I'm going to send it back to you to fix, and I may actually say to myself, this person is not somebody I want to deal with because they.
Well, that's where the disaster part comes in. I mean, what if you're your first time client and you don't think about this and you do it? It is going to be somewhat disastrous to have to go. Right. Oh.
And if somebody says something to you, you know what you're going to say? That damn instructor didn't tell me this. You see my point?
Yeah.
Well, I'm joking, but that's reality. The reality is, what if I didn't tell you this? If I didn't tell you this, maybe you might not have known it. I bet you any money that somebody in here did not know this.
I mean, even if you were going to go to print it yourself, say you brought it to Kinko's,
Yeah.
there'd be a problem. And then I say it's a family portrait, and everybody's expecting their Christmas card to have this family portrait on it.
Right.
You know, it wouldn't look too professional.
No. If you didn't do the bleed on it, it certainly wouldn't. And again, what you have to realize is a lot of times these covers are being produced. Maybe 20,000 of these covers are being produced, and as accurate as their cutting machines are and their folding machines, there are times when the cutting machines and folding machines go off by just a tiny little bit. So if these bleeds aren't there to account for that, you're going to see little white edges and stuff that are going to make the job, essentially ruin the job. Right. That's what it is. So the whole point of this makes perfect sense, because you've allowed yourself all this extra space that if the cut goes off, ever so slightly, there's picture image there to account for that. So really important for you to understand this. Okay?
Got it.
Now, how much was there any part of this you didn't know, or you were hep to this whole thing, Lori?
No, I was following along. It makes perfect sense.
But did you know it already? Was there any part of this that you didn't know, or was it all something?
I knew all about the bleed lines. I hadn't read the assignment instructions yet for this week.
Week 3, take your week 3 assignment. If I were to go back to week 3, it would simply say make it 6x9, which technically is not incorrect. My problem with that is it doesn't give you access to one very important piece of information, and that is that in the project that you're working on, in the context of the project that you're working on, which is a book cover, which is going to bleed all the way around, there needs to be 1/8 of an inch of extra image all the way around. And with that assignment size, it's not there.
Right. I wouldn't even have probably even crossed my mind.
Yeah. Right. So I'm just telling you, because that would be the correct way to do it. And I needed you to at least understand that, everybody.
Really important.
So, all right. So now the rest of this is just, basically following the instructions here. I think the most important thing would be for you to keep in mind that you're going to do 2 things. You're going to end up sending me a CMYK, I believe. Let's see where it says here. I think maybe it's up higher. No.
Where is that?
Here we go. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
First and last. So your file, 300 DPI, which is not a problem because that's what it is. And you're going to convert it to CMYK mode, which I'll show you how to do. You probably know how to do it, but I'll show you how to do it. And you're going to also submit the PSD for grading. So you're going to create a CMYK PDF. Oh, actually,
let's see.
No, it's just PSD. So you're going to submit the PSD file in CMYK mode.
Right.
All right. And then you're going to create a 72 DPI JPEG to your Behance site. So that's the other thing you're going to do.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions about any of that?
No.
Any comment you want to make before we move on?
I'm good.
Good. All right. So we still have tomorrow night. We're going to do a lot tomorrow night. Let's go into here for a minute. Now, the first thing I want to do, all right, this is what I'm going to work on first. I'm going to play around with backgrounds a little bit. But the first thing I want to do is I want to show you how I would prepare my final submission, okay? Just based on the information that I just gave you. Remember now, we are not in InDesign. We are in Photoshop. And we're not even in Illustrator. In Illustrator, you are able to do bleeds. I don't know whether we can do bleeds in here, but let me just go File, New, okay? And let me go to Save Photo, Print. There we go. Advanced options. See, yeah, we don't have bleed. See, there's no bleed here.
No.
So that's why it's incredibly important what I just told you, because you can't indicate bleeds here. So what you have to do is go in here. Now the instruction says 6 by 9.
Which is incorrect.
Thank you. So what you would actually be putting in here is 6.25. And my setting is set to inches. See that?
Yep.
So I don't have to worry about that. 6.25 by 9.25. Now, 25 is equal to 1/4 of an inch. And that means that will give you the overall width, will give you enough that to bleed 1/8 of an inch on either side, top and bottom as well. Does that make sense?
It does.
All right. So now I'm going to hit, let's see, everything else is good here. 6.25, 9.25, resolution 300 pixels per inch, color mode RGB for now, right? Background white, hit create. There it is. There's your submission. Now, it looks just like a 6x9.
Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't look any different. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that when I open this up, okay, and if I go to image and go to canvas size, what does it tell me?
Sorry, I'm blowing my nose.
Okay, what does that tell me?
It's got what you punched in to begin with, 6.25 by 9.25.
Right, so my point is, if you're submitting a PDF to me, okay, I could very easily, you don't know whether I'm going to do it or not, I could very easily come in here and go to image canvas size, okay, and I could check the size of this to see whether you made that adjustment or not. Now, I am not going to fail you if you don't. I am going to feel very bad about you if you don't, because the truth of the matter is, I'm going to I mean, look, it's now 7:56. I spent nearly an hour talking, I should say about a half hour talking about this. And if I spend a half hour talking about something, it's because it's important and I believe it's something that you should really know.
Exactly.
Okay. So really, again, as I say, this is something I just really want you to be aware of. Okay. So there is my basic layout. Now, what I might do at this point is go File, Save As, and what I may do here is call this Final Submission. Do I have anything in there? No. Wait a minute. I do. Yeah. So let me call this Final dash Cover dash Art. Okay. Final Cover Art, and it's PSD. Hit Save. Okay, so there's my final cover art. Now, what I may do right off the bat is go File, Open, and I may go in here and I may look for my, what is this? Is this it? Let me try this. Let me see if that's it. Actually, before I do this, let me do this. Let me see if I can locate it first. I don't want to just go off and, nope, see, that's not it. Let me go to week 3. Maybe it's in week 3. Horse background. Where was it? Background. Final illustration. Where is that piece that is it in here? Nope, it's not in there. Oh boy. Nuts. All right. Where did I put that? What are these? Nope, that's not it. I'll be darned. Where is it? I'm looking for the
background that you did.
Yeah, I'm wondering if, let me see. Masthead? There it is, right there. There it is. Okay, so here's the masthead. That's what I was looking for. It just completely threw me off. Okay, here's our masthead. Now, there's a problem with this masthead, okay? The problem with the masthead is it's kind of like ass backwards. A Centaur story, New York Times best-selling author Tina M. Nelson, is all at the bottom.
Right.
Okay, now the problem is that the Centaur's at the bottom. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen is you're going to be putting this type all over top of your picture. Now, what sense does that make? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Because, again, you've got a sky up here that's what? Just a cloudy sky? And you got a Centaur and you got all this stuff happening on the bottom. You're going to put type over top of it?
Yeah.
Does that make any sense to you?
No.
No, it doesn't. So what I'm going to do is I am going to place this, all right? So I'm going to close this. Now I know what it is. I'm going to go into my final cover art. I'm going to go File, Place, and and I'm going to find Centaur masthead. I guess that was it, right? And place it. There it is. Now, I'm going to go place, and I'm going to hold the shift key down and up key it and bring it way up here. Okay? I'm not finally placing it. I'm generally placing it. So what I'm saying to you is that in reality, for my final piece, my type, which is being supplied to me, makes more sense being up there than it does down. There's been a couple of people at least that have submitted their submissions last week with the type over top of the Centaur. And I just ask you to think about it. Does it make any sense doing that? You know, I mean, the Centaur is the character, the main character of your piece, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to put text over top of the main picture and leave the sky blank. Okay? Now, again, I know that's the way they submitted it to you, but, you know, from a design standpoint, does it make any sense? No. So, I mean, you have to, at some point, look at this and say, that's not correct. So I'm going to do something to make it correct. And I'm pointing it out so that you guys, number one, know I'm telling you that this is incorrect. So you don't feel intimidated or you know, concerned about it. Do it because it's right. I mean, to literally go to all the trouble of creating that Centaur and that wonderful background, and then just placing text over top of the whole front of it. I mean, it's crazy. It's just absolutely nuts. So, okay.
Thank you.
All right. So anyway, this right here now, this right here is the beginning of my book. All right. So I have this much done. I have a background here, and I have the casual or the Centaur masthead. So I'm going to save this file, save, and we're going to come back to this. Okay. We're going to come back to this. Now I have these two backgrounds. I created this background, and I created this background. Last week, I showed you how I created this background. I created this background by taking 3 layers. Okay, I have this layer here, which is literally nothing more than just gray. Okay, it's just all it is it's a filled layer of gray, and all I did was I decided where I wanted my gray to be, and I just clicked, and then I dumped it in with my paint bucket tool, so I have this layer of gray here, right? Yep. Then I have this layer here, which is my sky, S-K-Y. Okay, and if I click on this, you can see that, watch what happens when I click on the sky layer. Can you see what I have here? A blend mode.
Yeah, a blend.
Okay, so if I take this blend mode, it's hard light is what I'm using. If I take, and again, this goes into what we're talking about for our assignment this week, and that is to actually use blend modes to create an interesting background for this. Yeah. And I want to point out something that you might or may not have noticed. Did you take a look along here?
I was just going to say, are those gravestones?
No, look at it. Look at it hard. Look at it real hard. It's a skyline.
It's a city.
Yes.
Got it.
So it's a city. It's evidently somebody messed around with this picture and they added a city into there, because in this foreground this looks like cement or stone or sand or something. So and it looks very, very crudely done here, but that is a city. So you can easily see that you don't want to use that part of it. And as a matter of fact, the sky looks like I forget that stuff. That's me. But that sky looks like it's been messed with as well. So this is a very strange montage image, but it works interestingly. Now, again, what I did with this was I changed this back. I'm going to change this back to normal. Okay, and you can see what this looks like normally. You don't see any of the gray. Now, the whole point is what I'm trying to do is give this a mysterious look. So I clicked on this. I went through a couple of different, there's darken. See, that doesn't work at all. I'm going to try multiply. That is way too dark. It just doesn't work. I'm going to try lighten, and it almost looks like nothing's happening there. Yeah. So what I did was I came down to overlay, and see, overlay's okay, but I found that hard light worked better. Okay, so you see what happens with hard light is you get the extreme of this nice penetrating, zooming light that's going down there, which I thought was really cool in this composition. And I get a lot of the gray showing through here. So that's what I did. And then I took this and I masked. I created a mask. You saw me do it last week. I actually free painted this using black and white to bring this this kind of effect into play, so that you get almost like a misty, combination of this foreground image, which is very misty looking. It's a little more sharp down here, and then you got a lot of sky showing through here. Okay, so that is one of the images that I did. I demonstrated that last week.
Right.
But I have another one that I'm going to work on this week, and that's this guy right here. Okay. And I don't know whether I'm completely done with it or not, but I did do a little bit of work with it, and I'll show you what I did. I'll give you an idea of what I did. I actually kind of screwed up because I didn't duplicate this layer. Let me duplicate that layer. Okay, I should have kept this layer intact so that I could show you. Delete it. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide that layer and all of this stuff up here. Okay, and that is the picture. That is the actual picture, and I'm going to drag this down a little bit. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Edit, undo. Okay, I wanted to drag this down. There we go. Okay, as you can see, I got a background layer, which is my sky. I have this layer, which is what we're looking at, which is what the original field looks like. And then I have my field, which I masked. Then I have this layer here, which I'm about to show you. I'll show you in a minute what I did with that. And then what I did was I used some effects. I used this is a hue saturation, and this is a brightness and contrast. Okay? So starting out with this, what I did was I brought in that sky layer. All right? And I'm gonna file save as. All right, because I'm going to redo this. I'm going to save alt background _ start, START. Okay, and hit save. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to actually rebuild this for you so that you can see how I did this. So I'm going to throw all this away and delete it. There we go. And delete this. Delete that layer. And that layer right there. This layer right there. And this layer right there. So in this start situation, also the inner shadow has to go. So I have to get rid of that. There we go. Okay, so you see right now, I basically just have that image as though I were opening it in the first place. Okay,
Right.
So here's my background. Let me go File, Open, and I have to open the final one. Background Alt. Where is it at? Alt background right there. There it is. There we go. Okay, so there's my alt background. Let me get rid of that one so we simplify it a little bit. And background, PSD, alt background. And what's this? That's that. Let me close that. Okay, so save it. There's nothing to save, no. Okay, so here's my final. All right, and again, as I told you, I have this image back here, and then I have the original image, which I did something to get that sky in there, which I think you can figure out by looking at that. What did I do?
You masked the sky.
That sure did. And then what I did here was I made a selection of the foreground material.
Right.
And then what I did was I used this, which is my, I'll show you, hue saturation. Okay. And then this one here, which is my brightness and contrast. Now, the important thing for you to understand is that the hue saturation, watch, see how I removed it? You see what it did?
Yep.
Okay. And what it did was it kind of washed it out and gave it a kind of a gray look. I'm trying to make it dull, and I'm trying to make it a little more spooky. And also the brightness, see what I did? I darkened it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So the point is that these two layer adjustments, contrast, fill adjustment, they're global. That's known as a global adjustment. What global means is that it's applying to everything beneath it. So it gets applied to this, it gets applied to this, it gets applied to this.
Right.
If I wanted it to not be global, what I would have to do is I would have to choose a layer. I'd have to put it in front of a layer, and I'd have to click on a particular layer, the space between it, and apply it to just that layer. Do you remember me doing that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. All right, now, before we go any further, all right, I'm going to go back to this one. I'm going to go image size. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to see how big this is. So right now, I have a width of 15.573 by a height of 10.347. And what is the resolution?
300.
Bingo. So do I have enough material to make a 6x9 cover out of this?
20.
I have more than enough. You're absolutely right. Now, if I wanted to, I could go in. I probably am not going to do that. I could go in and I could change the canvas size and crop this down. But I think what I'll do is I'll wait on this. But I have enough material. So again, the reason I'm doing this is because just to be smart, if you are going to create something like this, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're going to be able to pull it off. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you have enough image size and resolution. The project calls for 300 pixels per inch, 6x9, and we have 15 by 10 by 300. We're good, okay?
Yep.
All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by duplicating the image because I always duplicate the image. I didn't do it last time. This is my foreground. Foreground, call that foreground, okay? Now, hold on. I'm going to sneeze.
Oh,
Thought I was going to sneeze. I didn't. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I have decided that, you see this little line right along here?
Uh-huh.
That is the line that I'm using to create my skyline, okay? So I'm just going to come in here, and I'm not going to use a channel pull on this because a channel pull, it's just not going to work. See, that's my darkest one.
Right.
It's just not going to work. They're not going to work. Although this one could work, possibly. But I just found that the best way to do this was to get my quick selection tool and make sure I'm on the foreground layer and come in here. And remember what I told you that these tools do. They look for edges. They look for clean, sharp edges. And you can see that this line runs very cleanly to about here. Then it gets a little dicey. It's pretty dicey over here, but keep in mind I only need 6 inches, so I'll deal with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come across here, and I'm just going to start making a selection. Just drag a selection across here like that. Okay, now you can see I have a little bit of a problem here. I might be able to actually ignore that problem, but over here I have to come in and I have to adjust this a little bit. And to do that, I have to hold down the Alt key.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and see what I'm doing? I'm just dragging along that edge there.
Yep.
Okay, and I actually end up getting too much here, but I can come in here now and I can drag that selection over, and I can get something a little bit more accurate like this. See, and I just keep playing with it a little tiny bit, and maybe come over here and just bring that back up a little bit. And you see, I end up with something which isn't bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, now what I do is I'd come up here and I would add to this selection and make sure I get the whole sky.
Okay.
So you see how I got this whole, because this is all going to be sky. I don't want any of this right now. Okay. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the select menu and I'm going to go modify feather. And I feathered this. I think I might have used 3, but I'm going to just actually back it off and make it 1 and hit OK. Okay. And now with the foreground layer, I'm going to hide the background layer because I want you to see this in a stark way. I'm going to make sure the foreground layer is selected. I'm going to click mask. And see how I got a mask out of this?
Yep.
Okay. Now all I need to do is select the mask and go image, adjust, invert. There you go. Look at that.
Yep.
That's basically how I created that area at the bottom. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on layer 0 and I'm going to go file place. This is really not that difficult. It really isn't. Let's go file place. And see, again, I'm going to forget which one these things are. Let me go back to image editing. Is it week 3? Yeah, week 3, background. Which one was it?
Oh boy.
Hold on, I'll find out. It was week 3. I'll find out. Background. It's ThinkStock 101. I wonder if ThinkStock 101 will be fine. Let me try it. Open, place. There it is.
There we go.
Okay. Now the only thing I need to do is it's a little smaller, so I'm going to. I could actually trim it, but I'm just going to hold down the Shift and the Alt key, and I'm going to make it just a tiny bit bigger, and then I'm going to click on this and place it, and there we have it. So, like I said, this is just a duplicate. Now what we have is we have this guy. Let's take a look at the final. Okay, and you can see very similar, right?
Yep.
Very similar, except that what I did was I created an inner shadow. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this inner shadow on this. It's an effect. And I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to show it to you. There it is. So I used the blend mode is multiply. The opacity is 61. Angle is 30, right? The distance is 31. The choke is 9. And the size is 250. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because if you actually wanted to try the exact same thing that I did, which you don't have to do. You should know what the numbers I used were. So it's inner shadow. I'm going to hit cancel because I'm not trying to change anything. I'm just trying to show you. Then I come in here like this. Let's go into this one here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this layer right here, and I'm going to put an effect on it. And it's going to be inner shadow. Okay, and as you can see, it comes up 61, 31, 9, 250, right? Because that was the last one that I used. And if you take a look at it, let me hit OK. There it is. Now watch when I hide the effects.
Oh, wow.
You see how it's affecting that? It really, what it does basically is it adds definition along this line right here.
Yeah.
That was what I'm mostly concerned about, is that it adds definition along this line. By adding that darkness along the line, watch when I hide it. Can you see how weak that is?
Yeah, there's no contrast.
None whatsoever. And as a matter of fact, by just adding that little effect, the inner shadow effect to it, okay? Now all of a sudden it's giving me trouble. There we go. By adding that little effect, it punches up and makes that whole foreground work in a solid way. Okay? So now I have a really interesting sky. I got a really interesting foreground as a beginning for my my little figure. Okay? All right. And this is easy to do, right? Did you say anything hard in there?
No.
No, not hard at all. Now, here's the next thing. What I want to do is I want to grab some of this foreground stuff here. And the reason I want to do that is because I'm going to bring my character in. And I'd like to have him standing behind some of this stuff. I'd like to make it appear as though he's sort of standing behind some of this stuff.
Right.
Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have that picture selected by clicking on it. Can you see the little white outline around it?
Yes.
Yeah, that means that that guy is what's selected. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to get my quick selection tool, and I'm going to come down along the bottom, and I'm going to start dragging across the bottom, and I'm going to try to select a little bit of that stuff at the bottom here. And I'm going to just come up, and I'm going to keep coming up and see what I can grab. So I got to watch it because I don't want to grab too much.
Right. Just
grabbing some of it down here. And I'm actually grabbing more than I need. Some of this stuff I don't want because it's bushes, and I don't want them standing in front of those bushes. So I'm going to try to get rid of some of this. Back off on a little bit of that stuff right there. See, right there, I don't need that. This is probably pretty good, just like that. Okay? So can you see I got a selection going right there? Maybe knock out a little bit of that right there. I'm really not going to need that much of this. You're going to be surprised. But there it is. See, I got a little bit of a selection? Okay. So now what I'm going to do, with that selected, I'm going to go to the Layer menu, go to New, Layer via Copy. And now watch when I hide this. Okay? So I got this very crude selection that I'm going to stand in front of, have in front of my character. Okay. Now, the only problem is that I get this inner shadow. it picks up the inner shadow because it was applied.
Right.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that and I'm going to drag that to the garbage can because I don't want it. And now that's gone. I'm going to call this front.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now I have this layer here. I don't know whether I named that or not. What did I name that? I guess I didn't. So this is yeah. So this is just my foreground, but I don't see a name. I can't see it. All right. So there are my layers. There's basically my layers. So now what I want to do is I want to let's go back to my alt. I have two different effects here. I have this effect here, and as you can see what I did, I set this up. The hue is a +8, okay? And the saturation, you see how it's got a negative sign?
Yep.
-21, which means essentially, if you look at this, you see how it goes to gray?
Yep.
Yeah, that's desaturated. That means that all the color is being taken out of this. By desaturating, what it does is it darkens it. It gives it kind of a gloomy, you want it to have a kind of a gloomy look?
Yep.
Right. And then, of course, lightness. I can come in here and, I can drag my lightening slider this way, or I could drag my darkening slider. See, the darkening slider I don't like very much. Although that's interesting. I kind of liked it where I had it, which was, I like that beam. See, that blows that beam out. I don't want that. I want the beam to be hot. So I'm looking for something kind of neutral and gray and dismal. That's what I'm really looking for. Okay. So what I have here, I'm going to cancel this because I want to see if I, let me see here. Let's go.
Hi, June.
Hi, June. How you doing? There we go. Okay. And that is +1. That's all I did. How are you doing tonight, June? So let's go in and let's apply this. Let's go into our beginning here. Now, the important thing to understand is I want this to apply globally to the entire composition. To do that, I'm just going to select the front. And what I'm going to do is come down to the effects. Oh, I'm sorry, to the adjustments. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for hue saturation. And what I'm going to do is the hue is going to go +8, right about there, +8. Okay, and then I'm going to bring this down to -21, and you can see it washing out.
Yeah.
-21, and then I think this was just like a +1.
Yeah, it wasn't very much.
Yeah, like +1. That's probably good right there.
There you go.
That is very similar to what I have on the others. Okay, so again, what we're doing is we're working with effects and we're working with adjustment layers and effects. And we're getting them from here. So now what I'm going to do is with this selected, I'm going to come down, I'm going to choose another adjustment. Okay, and before I do that, let's go back. That adjustment is the brightness and contrast. Okay, and for the brightness, I went -52. Okay, and for the contrast, I went -50. Now, again, this is going to work globally. It's going to work on everything. So here's the important thing. In a few minutes after I get these done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in there and I'm going to take my character, my centaur, and I'm going to open a centaur up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in and place my centaur. Now, I've never completely done this yet, so I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work. We're going to have to see how it works. But I'm going to bring it in, and when I bring it in, I'm going to bring it in so that it's right above that, or actually right below that layer right there. And this is my foreground layer, by the way. I guess I didn't get that name.
Oh, that's right. I thought you did, huh?
I might have done it on the other one.
Oh, that's right.
Foreground. There we go. Okay, so now that's named. All right, so this one here. So let's go to the one that I haven't done yet, and let's create another. Yeah, that's selected. Make sure it's selected, and come in. And this one is brightness and contrast. And like I told you, -52. 52. That's probably good right there. Oops. It's a little bit hard to get this because my There we
It's a
go.
little twitchy sometimes.
Yeah. And then this one here is negative 50. There we go, negative 50. Okay? Now, again, if you watch, you see what I'm saying? Look at that.
Yeah.
Quite,
It's amazing.
quite extreme, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just amazing how far Photoshop has come, really, and I'm getting much more comfortable with it, and the fact that I'm going to have Photoshop do the work for me.
Absolutely. And what I really like about this, is watch this line of light when I click this on.
Yeah, that's
See that really pumps that mysterious thing out. I mean, it's just cool. And it really makes this whole thing, the temperature, that's what's known as temperature. What it's doing is it's dropping the temperature of this scene tremendously. I mean, you're basically seeing something that's, completely cool. It's almost chilly by comparison, and that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to come up with ways of making, this image very mysterious and you don't want it to look like this. In other words, if I hide these, that's just way too bright,
Yeah, it looks truly believable. I mean,
see this right here.
We got our storms. That's like, oh, honey, we better, make sure everything's all right because there's a storm moving in. I mean, it's very believable.
Yeah. So you have an effect, and the effect does that. It really adds a wonderful edge to this. Really makes it believable. Then you add your adjustments up here, okay, your hue and saturation, which cools it down, brightness and contrast, which darkens it down, and you got something which is completely different. So now what we have to do is we have to select this layer right here. Actually, let me see if I can get that. It's giving me trouble. I actually have to open it this way. That's what I have to do. Oops, hold on. There we go. Now I can open it up and get it. There we go. I want to be able to click on that. There we go. So I want that layer selected because when I do what I'm going to do, I want it to go there. So now I'm going to go File, Open, and let's see here. Where's my week 3? Let's see my Centaur. Let me take a look. I don't know which one I want to use. I guess I'll use this guy. I guess I could use this guy. Let me see what the other ones look like. Let me go File, Open. I don't know which one I want to use at this point. I might as well look at them all before I do. I don't like that one very much. File, Open. See what the third. You like that one?
I like the last one, the first one so far.
I don't like him at all. No. I don't like him at all. This one is actually, you know what? Maybe I'll try this guy because I used the other guy. Let me try this guy. Okay. All right. So now I'm basically done. I'm basically done with this. There's my alternate background. I'm going to get rid of that one. Okay. Save changes. No. Okay. So you have any questions about this much?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Well, June, actually, you came in the middle of this. So what you're going to have to do, June, is you're going to have to watch this. Do you have any questions, though? I mean, is there anything you want to ask as for what you came in on? No? Okay. All right. So at any rate, the next step. Are you there? Okay. So what I'm going to do is go to the View menu or Window menu, and I'm going to go Arrange, and I'm going to tile vertically. Okay. So now I'm going to select this guy. Now the problem I have with this guy is that he is in like all these different layers right here. So I'm going to get rid of that layer right there. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I got this, 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 and this. So what I think I'm going to do is hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to select all 4 of those layers right there. Okay. Those are the layers that I use to create this guy right now. And I'm going to put him in a folder. Okay. So now I have this folder. You see, and there he is. He's in that folder. I'm going to change it to Centaur. Okay, so now I have my Centaur, and I have him in a layer all by himself. Okay?
I have a question, Bill.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's an ignorant question. How do you make the folder?
Easy. I'll show you. Edit, undo. Hold on. Edit, step backwards. And edit, step backwards.
I should have asked you that as you were.
Yeah, no, it's easy. It's really simple. All you do is this. I have this layer 1, which is his skin color.
Correct.
Okay. And then I have this one here, which is his torso mask.
Correct.
Okay. This one here is, brightness and contrast. That's his tail. Okay.
Right.
All right. I'm going to leave that alone. And then there's your horse.
Okay.
So the horse silo. So all you do to create this folder right there, and what a folder is essentially is it's a collection of layers. That's what a folder is. So what you do is you decide where you want the layers to be combined. So you start off by clicking on the horse and hold the shift key down and go up and click on the skin color. So this folder is going to have in it the horse silo, the brightness and contrast, torso mask, and the skin color. You click the folder, and there he is, and we'll call that Centaur.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this is how you do it in every case. You just make sure that the layers are in proximity to one another. In other words, they should be right after each other. Watch. You when I hide it.
Yeah. Away.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop that combined layer in here. There he is.
Wow.
Okay. And now I'm just going to close this because I don't need it anymore. Save it? No. All right. Now there's my Centaur. So what I want to do is first of all, he's right there, right where I want him to be. So what I'm going to do with him now is I'm going to take him and I'm going to move him down. Look what's happening. You see how he is disappearing behind the brush?
That is so cool.
Yeah. See that?
Yeah.
There he is. And now he's in there, and you can just play around with him until you get him where you want him. Keep in mind one very important thing, that you're going to ultimately be adding copy to this. So maybe he's going to come down quite a bit. I have no idea where where he should be. I'm guessing because I got copy up there that he probably needs to be quite low. Now the other thing that I could do if I wanted to is
I would have forgot about the copy.
The what?
I would have forgot about the copy.
I can actually keep moving him around until I find a place where I like him. I think that's probably pretty good, Now what I can do is I can come in here and I can mask this layer. Okay? And what I could do is I could carefully come in here with black, and I could get my paintbrush and I could set that flow very low, and I could start painting out I might have it a little bit too low. Let's see if I can. Let me bring it up high. There you go. See how that painted it out?
Yeah.
Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to soften it. I want to soften it, and I want to bring it down very low. Because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here, and I'm going to fade a little bit of this out. I'm going to try to fade some of this out so that some more of that horse shows. See?
Yeah.
See what I'm doing? I'm trying to just come in here and fade where the horse is. I don't exactly know where his legs go, so I'm having a little trouble with it. But you see what I'm doing?
Yeah, that is.
I'm fading some of this out so that I can bring some of that horse back in. Okay,
so
that's
similar to what we did when we put the
bodies together.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Like I say, you don't have to be exact with this. You just need to get it so that you can see it a little bit. You don't have to go crazy. See how I'm fading them in, making it look a little bit more realistic.
Looks good.
Yeah. And just keep fading it down a little bit, just in that area, because that's where he is. Now, if I hide this, okay, see, I get a sense of where his legs are.
Yeah. Right.
Now, if I want, bring it back. If I want, I can take that Centaur and I can try moving him up a little bit. Let me see. Oh, I got to actually get to change the tools. I can bring him up a little bit. See? Bring him up some, like that. All right. Now, he might be actually too big. So the other thing I could do, if I wanted, with the Centaur selected, go File, or Edit Free Transform. And I could come in here and hold down the Shift key and the Alt key. And I could just reduce him, make him a little bit smaller, something a little bit like that. Okay? And then apply it. And maybe move him over and down a little bit. See, now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
There you go. File save. Now, the other thing is that he becomes part of the overall color. You see how unnatural he looks like this?
Right.
But when you consider the hue and saturation that adjusts everything, and the brightness and contrast that sort of changes the overall quality of this, then he starts looking real good. Now, there's one other thing that you could do to the Centaur. I don't know how this is going to work, but here's another little experiment. Come in here and go into your effects, and what you're going to do is you're going to choose an inner shadow on him as well. Okay? There's the inner shadow. Now, what you would do with the inner shadow is you would take this thing and you would bring it down, bring the inner shadow down quite a bit, like that.
How cool is that?
See? And that makes him even more dynamic. And if you want, you can play around with the impasse. See, that's, I think, too dark.
Too dark, yeah.
You can bring it down and bring it down to where it's more light, but it gives him an even more realistic look. And hit OK. All right. And now if I hide that, watch.
Yep.
See how much better he looks?
Oh, yeah. And before you did that, you could hardly see the horse's front legs. They blended in so well.
Right. And I'm actually going to come in here now, go back into here. OK. And with my, I'm going to actually zoom in. OK. Let me zoom in here. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint a little bit more of this out. I'll come in here with my paintbrush and make it smaller. And I make sure I have it set real low. I'm just going to, you know, eat away at some more of this. Just eat away a little bit more of this. You know, get some more of that leg showing. You know, come in here and actually make that leg show a little bit more. Make it look a little bit more like he's actually there.
I must be the school nerd because I think this is so awesomely fantastic.
It's fun. You know, it's fun to do this. It really is. It's creative. It's fun. You just have to, you know, you have to take your time with it and you have to look at it. See, now what I'm seeing is I had a couple of bad areas. What I'm doing is I'm removing the bad areas. The flower should be there, but the
green.
Another thing that I could do if I wanted to make this easier is I could just come over here with this and I could just literally go like this where I'm going to, you know, quickly come around and you know, just select around that flower.
Cool, June. Me too.
I'm sorry. Are you guys
I don't think June's
chatting?
working or something.
I don't have the chat open though. That's not really right.
I don't think June's mic is working or something, so she's got to chat.
Okay, I'm sorry. I should have it out. That was really bad of me.
It says she's delayed, so that's why she's typing.
Okay. You guys, I got June here. Anyone else here? No, just June. June, how you doing with this? You watching what I'm doing? You good with this? Yeah, and then what I can do is I can come in here. After I select that little flower, I could come in here with my paintbrush, you know, and I can easily paint away. See, what I'm doing is I'm painting away. I'm going to make it a little bit stronger. I'm painting away, but I'm trying to make it so that I don't paint that flower. Oh, actually.
Let's see.
I'm actually going the wrong way with this.
Why did I get confused? Oh, okay. I got it.
There we go.
There
okay.
we go. Okay.
Select inverse. There we go. Now I will see how that paints that away.
Okay.
I was just going the wrong way with it.
That's right.
What I'm doing is I'm knocking away some of this so that, you know, his leg is more pronounced. That's what I'm trying to do. You know, and I'm just trying to do it. I'm just trying to do it locally, you know.
I think my biggest problem is selecting the right layer and making sure I'm on the correct layer.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, you can always open up the history panel. That's the way I handle it. I always have the history panel close by. Okay, so now I have this pretty much done. Okay, and again, you can just keep playing with this and getting it the way you want it. Keep going until you find what you got. Let me go to the view menu, fit on screen. And there we have them. Looks pretty good.
Looks good.
Looks pretty good, right? What do you guys think?
I think it looks really cool.
All right, so do we got any, are there any questions about anything? Any questions?
I'm good. How about you, June? I know you can't. I know you have to type. No, she's good.
Good. So now the next thing that I would have to do is I would have to, and do you think, are you guys happy with the size of my, happy with the size of my, or the relationship between my guy in the background? Is that good? You think that's good?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if the masthead will change that or not, but right now I think it looks really good.
Well, I'm going to have to see. We'll have to see that in a minute. There's one other thing that I could do. There's another thing I could do here, and that is this. I could select that layer, and I could select the Centaur layer. And what I could do is I could move both of those layers down to give myself more space. Watch. Look.
Oh, yeah.
What I'm doing?
Wow.
I'm just lowering the whole thing.
How cool is that?
So I've given myself a little bit more space there. There's no law saying you can't do that. You know what I mean? You can just move it down a little bit, you know, and give yourself a little more space. And as a matter of fact, if I wanted to, I could go left or right with it as well. You know, if I wanted to, I could go left or right. Move them to the left, move them to the right. I could do whatever I want to do. And there's very little damage being done. In other words, you can't really tell the difference all that much. You know what I mean? It looks pretty natural.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but just remember, you don't want to move it an awful lot, because eventually what's going to happen is, if you really look carefully, you can see that, well, no, actually it isn't. I was going to say they look like they're the same, but they're not. They're different. I don't think it caused any problem at all. I really don't. I think it's very believable. All right, so here's the next step. The next step is to go back to image, canvas size, okay? And keep in mind that right now this guy is a height of 10 and a width of 15. And what we need this thing to be 9.25 high by 6 wide, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit cancel, and I'm going to, there's two ways that I could do this. I could either go image size, and I could reduce the height. Let me bring it into inches, and I could reduce the height to 9.25, okay, and hit OK. There. And now this thing has been reduced. Go to image size. This thing has been reduced down to 9.25 inches high. Now what I got to do is I got to make this thing 6.25 wide. So one way I could do that would be to come in here and create a shape.
Okay.
Let me see if I can do this. Create a shape. You create a layer. Hold on. I got to create a layer, I think. This chat's in the way now.
I know. I keep seeing this blue box on top of everything.
I can't win. I know I can't win. Jeez. All right, let me see here. Hold on. Let me move it over. All right, so let's move that over. There we go. That's better. All right, so what I'm going to do is create a new layer.
Okay.
Here, and I'm going to see if I can make a shape on that layer. Okay, and what I want that shape to be is I want it to be 6.25 IN, okay? And it doesn't really matter the height. So I'm just going to hit OK, and there it is, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, and I am going to try to figure out how I want to frame this thing. I know I got to frame it all the way from the top, but I don't know where I want to go with this. So if I go to my guides, I can come in here and I can bring out a guide, okay? And if I come over here, I can bring out a guide. You see what I've done?
Yeah.
And now I can hide that layer.
Okay.
And I can see kind of like what my composition is going to look like.
Now, could you size it all in the image size, the height and the width?
No, because what'll happen is it'll go one way or the other. In other words, I have to, if you go to image size, watch, go to image size, right there. No, I'm sorry. Image canvas size. Image canvas size. Yeah, canvas size. See, the problem I have is if I reduce this thing, I have to pick a point.
Oh, that's right.
And the point is not in the center, and it's not on the left, and it's not on the right, and it's not on the top or the bottom. It's sort of somewhere in here. So the only way to do it that makes any sense, really, is to create a graphic shape that was the right size, which is what I did there, okay? Right. And then I used guides to kind of bring it out to see whether I wanted it where I have it.
Okay.
Okay. Gotcha. And I think this is probably okay, although, you know, potentially I could still come in here and grab my Centaur, and I could grab that line of stuff in the foreground, and if I wanted to, I could move him over. See? I could move him over a little bit and get him a little bit more centered between these two lines right here.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now, again, do I know exactly how this is going to work? No, I don't. So what I would do is I would go File, Open, all right? And what I would do is I would try to find that Centaur masthead, and let's open that back up again. And now what I'm going to do is go Window, Arrange, Tile Vertically, okay? And I'm going to move this thing over a little bit like that so I can see it. Let me drag this over a little bit if I can. And now drag that over like that. There we go. That's more like it. Okay, and I'm going to select this one. And I'm going to actually grab Layer 4, which is that type. And I'm going to drag it and drop it in there. There it is.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
Not hard, right?
No.
Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of walk it over until I think it's like visually centered.
Right.
It's roughly centered. There.
Oh, that's good.
Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk it up to the top and see how much of a problem we have. I think we're going to have a problem. So,
yeah, he might just be a little too high, huh?
Well, we're going to have to see. We're going to have to take it and see. What I would do, here's how I would deal with it. Let me bring it up there first. That's as high as I can go with it.
How come it didn't bring The World Wasn't Ready on there?
Because this is not, if you look at this, this is not live text. I can't edit it. This was it's some graphic that they did. So they really screwed us up on this. The only way to do this is to redo the whole thing, and I don't want you have you do that. So the options that you have right here.
That then.
Yeah, I'm going to close this because I don't need it anymore. There's several options you have, and one of those options would be to do something like this, where you come in here and you select that A. Okay, and then what you do is you move that A down. See how I'm moving the A down?
Yeah.
See what I did?
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to select the word story, just like I did, just like that, just the word story.
Okay.
Okay. Get the move tool. I'm just dragging a marquee around it. I'll actually go select, deselect, because I got to get rid of that A first. So first, what I'm doing essentially is I'm modifying this type. Okay, I'm modifying the positioning of the type. Okay, and let me see if I can move that up just a touch. There we go. Now I'm going to get the move tool. When I do that, watch what happens. It automatically attaches itself to the actual text.
Wow.
And then I'm going to move that up. Now that kind of helps me a little bit.
Right.
Okay, that kind of helps me a little bit. Doesn't help me an awful lot, but it does help me a little bit. It gets me clear of my guy. All right?
Right.
So let me go select, deselect. And I guess the thing to do next would be to, let's see, how are we going to handle this? I would maybe try moving that up a little bit further now. Right here is a layer, right? Yeah, so let me try moving that up a little bit now. Yeah, see, I can bring it up to about there. That's pretty good. Now, the problem I have is New York Times best-selling author Tina M. Nelson. That's right in the way. So, and I also am missing the text. Let me open it. File, open. Let me open the other one again. Where was it? Masthead. There we go. the world wasn't ready.
Right, right.
Yeah, so I got the New York Times best-selling author. So what I could do with this, if I wanted to, is I could select this, just like I did, okay, and move it, okay. And you see how I got that selection now?
Uh-huh.
All right. Here's something else I'm going to try. I really don't know how this is going to work. I'm kind of winging it because I'm running into problems that I don't really like. I'm going to go Edit, Transform, Scale. Okay, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to scale this down like that. Okay, and apply it. And then I'm going to move it here.
Okay, yep.
Okay. Now, it's awful close to this guy's head. So what I would probably do, let me see if it worked. Select, deselect, and you can see it worked.
Yep.
Okay, so now maybe what I would do is I'd come in here, and I would find my centaur. Okay, and perhaps what I would do is hold the Shift key down and just move the centaur over a little bit. Okay. I'm moving the centaur over some.
Yep.
There. So I'm moving the centaur over a little bit, and now I got something that is beginning to work.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so you guys think you could handle what I just did up there with that type? Now, the reason that I'm doing this, I just want you to understand something. The reason I did that was because my particular composition, the centaur was getting in the way of the actual the type. So I had to figure out some way to do it. So what I did was I used a selection, which is what we've been doing through this whole thing, and I dragged a marquee selection around that A, just like that, and then I grabbed the move tool, and when I click and start moving it, oh, wait a minute, I have to be on the right layer first. Keep in mind, you got to be on the right layer. I can now see how it selects it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gives me the ability to move that text. And I did the same thing. It gives me the ability to move that text. It also gives me the ability to size that text if I wanted to. Now, here's the thing that you have to understand. That selection, once you deselect it, select, deselect, it is not on its own layer. It goes back to being on the same layer.
Okay.
So this now becomes one piece. Watch when I move this. See how that whole thing moves in one piece?
Yeah, okay.
Now that's what's known as a temporary selection. What I did was a temporary selection.
Okay.
Okay, so you got to keep that in mind.
Right, definitely.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to do two things. Now that I've moved this guy down here, I got to take a look. I think I've messed up. I've messed up my masking. So once again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to this layer right there, select that, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do some more fixing on my painting, on my horse, my centaur. I want to get rid of some of this because this is now, messing up the look.
Right.
So I'm going to get rid of some of that. And here's some more here that's got to go away too.
Yeah.
All right. So the only reason I'm doing this is I really want this to look right. So I'm coming in here and I'm really trying to deal with this. And that actually is fine. This may be just a touch right there. There we go. And this area here needs to be cleaned up. See? Cleaned up. Maybe come down here and bring that horse leg back out. You want to make it look convincing. You fade it out, bring that horse leg back in, and some of this stuff can go away too. You can leave a little bit if you want. You want some of that leg showing, but you also want. See, what I'm doing is I'm trying to make it look a little bit more believable.
Right.
So it looks a little bit more believable, and even now it's close. You're going to see it in a minute. I'm going to bring it back up to its right size, and you'll see it looks. Watch when I go view. Maybe I'll clean it up a little bit more here, a little bit more of that leg. I think it looks pretty good. And go to view, fit on screen, and there you have it. Okay. Now the other thing that I would do maybe here is I'll show you how to set some type because we still have that line, the world wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And I lost that. I really, lost that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top of the stack, which is right here. Right here. There we go. Actually, I'm going to go above that right there. And I'm going to get my type tool. And I'm going to click. And I'm going to type in the. Did I spell that right? I sure did. Now I'm going to select that,
Yes.
and I'm going to make it white, not gray. Make it white, and hit OK.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah, and now I'm just going to walk that into position.
Put that over.
Look at that.
There we go. Now we've got some contrast. Cool.
Like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if I really wanted to, I could come in here and I could get rid of this New York Times best-selling author Tina M. Nelson, and I could actually just get rid of it altogether and reset it just like I reset that if you really want to make it look nicer. I'm just trying, and you may, guys, when you do this, you may not have the same problem that I have because maybe your Centaur is smaller. I made my Centaur very big for my composition. If you make your Centaur a little bit bigger or smaller, then it's possible. As a matter of fact, let me show you my other one. Let me go File, Open. I'll show you the other one. Maybe tomorrow night I'll show you how I made the other one. Let me go to my week 4, I think. Week 4. Background. Let's see. Centaur. Final cover art. Here we go. Oh, no, that isn't it. Damn it. Hold on. File, Open. Final Submission. There it is. There. Okay, there's the other one. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's the other one. Now, you'll notice that in this one, the background is different. This guy is different. So, I mean, I still ended up doing The World Wasn't Ready. Do you know why? Because they had this thing. Now, again, what I was saying to you is this is very important. All right? I'm going to show you what some people did, and I'm going to show you how it doesn't make any sense. I'm going to take this thing, and I'm going to bring it down. Now, there's been a couple of people already that have submitted something that looks like this.
Yeah, no.
No, it makes no sense. Why? Because, first of all, you've got this whole area up here which is doing nothing.
Right.
Right? And now you're going to have this wonderful picture that you did, this wonderful image of the Centaur, so you're going to put text over top of it? It doesn't read very well that way. You see my point? So from a design standpoint, let's go File, Revert, and let me revert it back up. There you go. That's my alternate cover. That's my alternate cover. So I've done 2 of them. All right? And now what I'm going to do is, see, I got my guides here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just come in here and I'm going to click and drag a marquee around that whole area, just like that. And as long as I go to those 2 guides, I will have enough. Let's go Image Crop. There you go. And now go to Guides, View, Guides, or Clear Guides. There we go. Select, deselect. Now, there's my cover. There's my alternate cover.
Right.
Now, here's the thing I want you to see. Final submission. Okay, I want you to see this. Go to Image, Image Size. What size is it? 5.98 by 8.92. So it's essentially 6 by 9, isn't it?
Right.
Right, which is the wrong size.
Right.
Okay, hit cancel. So I'm going to come in, and this is what I did before, and I wanted to show you, because now I'm going to do the other one. Here's the other one. Okay, I'm going to go image size, or canvas size. Let's try that. 6.29 by 6.25, or 9.25. So see, again, this is a tiny bit taller, but it really doesn't matter because I still have 2.5, which is what I want. It's 2.9, but I still have 2.5, which means that I have the bleed that I need. So do you understand the difference and why I'm going to the trouble of making sure that you understand and do that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Definitely.
you have to have the actual bleed. It's absolutely important for you to have the bleed. Okay? I think I'm going to call it a night, and we'll continue tomorrow on this. Lori, and anybody else, if you haven't sent me in something for critique tomorrow night, send me an email and tell me what you'd like me to critique. Well, Lori, will you let me critique something tomorrow night?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Send me an email and tell me which particular piece you would like me to critique, and I will do that tomorrow night.
Okay. And I was just supposed to I actually remembered something. I was just supposed to remind you about the quiz.
Yeah, tomorrow night when we get in, I'll tell you what you do. When we get in tomorrow night, I assume you're going to be here, right?
Oh, yeah.
Very first thing you do is say quiz, and what I'll do is I'll do that first.
Gotcha. Deal.
Okay?
All right, Bill. Thank you so much.
All right. No, you're good. You have no questions?
No, I'm just going to follow along.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this for tomorrow night. And what we're going to do is tomorrow night, I'm going to continue on this. This is the one that I'm going to continue on. Okay.
Great. Okay.
Okay. You have a
Sounds
good
good.
night.
Have a good night, Bill. Thank
Yep.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.